techniques there. And then we're going to render it using the Rhino renderer and the Neon ray tracing plugin. And then if I have a chance, maybe show you a bit of what you can do with Brazil to sort of show a bit more of what Neon can do. So let's just start out here. So I'm starting from a blank screen here. And what I'm going to start by doing is maybe drawing in a few curves to give us kind of a starting point to work from. And I'm going to start just by drawing a line. And now, of course, because I've been using Rhino for a long time, I usually, type in command names. And we're going to place this one. This is going to be a reference for the for sort of the height of the cockpit. And let's make it about 5 feet tall, about like that. Space it out like so. And now I'm just going to draw some curves for the side view of it. And I'm not going to worry about what I need as far as actually making it goes now. I'm just going to go in and draw some curves out to get the general idea of it. And so we're going to start drawing the curve command, and usually I have the curve degree set to 5, which is sort of which is the maximum that you generally need for practical for sort of most practical purposes. Minimally for freeform shapes, you need to be working in degree 3. So let's just start here and let's place. I'll put the grid snap on, and let's draw this out like so. So something like this, and then we're going to let's snap to the end of that. Say that there, and then something about the cockpit here, and the fuselage shape back here. Let's join these curves together. Let me adjust this a little bit. That looks a little bit tall. Something roughly like this, and then we're going to have draw a polyline, just draw a simple polyline to show where we're going to place the tail, something like so, and then maybe I'll just draw another polyline to indicate about where we're going to locate the wings. That now, of course, while I am drawing a plane here, I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail about stuff that's into things that are specific about modeling planes, like how to get correct airfoils and that kind of thing. We're just trying to make a basic shape here. Let's see, maybe we'll adjust that a little bit. Just kind of thinking about this. All right. So now what I'm going to do is start making some surfaces, and I always try to get into making surfaces as fast as I can. At least whenever I'm sort of working from scratch, like this. And what I'm thinking about are what are sort of the overall basic shapes to this thing, and how can I sort of break it down into a number of shapes that I can sort of bring together to make a to create the shape. What I'm not trying to do, and of course this is sort of the beginner error in trying to make stuff like this, is to maybe say that we're going to draw that we're going to make the fuselage of the plane by just sort of taking the top curve and the bottom curve and just sort of sweeping a shape along that. That's not usually going to work. Most shapes are sort of vehicles and that are kind of a lot more complex than that. And you wind up, if you try, you wind up having to draw a gazillion section curves. So I'm going to start using one of the curves that I have, and what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to revolve it. Let's turn the snaps on here, and we're going to revolve it about, say, about here. And I'm selecting the how I want to revolve it here, like so. Let's work in a shaded mode. That's the shaded viewport here. I do have a custom view mode that I have set up that I actually use most of the time. That sort of overrides your standard surface colors and curve colors. And I've got all the surfaces in blue and all the curves in orange for sort of high contrast. That. So we have this, and what I'm going to do now is turn the control points on for it and think about doing some point editing for this. Now, so of course, so what I'm not going to try to do now here is what I'm going to keep separate is the cockpit windows here and the sort of the hood there, whatever you want to call that, because if I try to edit this to make that shape on its own, it's once again gonna get kind of crazy complicated. NURBS modeling is really about figuring out what to model that you can't see, and then how to sort of bring those shapes together. So we'll take this and we'll do a bit of point editing to what we have here. And I use keyboard nudging for this most of the time. Now you do have to be careful here whenever you're editing a revolved surface like this. You have to be careful about this, because this is what they call a degree 2 surface, and you can't really do much point editing with this without it sort of falling apart. That you can, that I can select a whole set of points here, and I can move those in and out, and I can scale those. But as soon as I start, say, grabbing a set of these 2 points here and start moving them on their own, then that's broken up the continuity of the surface. And you can see that if I turn on zebra striping, let's bring the control panel over here, that you can see here it's kind of subtle, but you can see here that moving that has suddenly created a sudden break in the surface here. So what you generally do, what we're going to do here now is raise the degree of this surface so that we can actually point edit it some. And there's a couple different ways of doing that. You can rebuild it, or you can use a change degree. And actually, maybe what I'll do is use the command rebuild UV, and it lets me rebuild the surface in only one direction. As opposed to the standard rebuild command, which changes the surface in both directions. So I want to change it in the U direction. The red arrows here tell me that that's the that's the U direction. And we'll maybe set the point count to, let's see, 8, and hit OK there. And that's our input there. And what are the properties of that? I didn't see a setting for the no, that's good. It's degree 3. So now I've got that, and I'm going to take some of these points here and move them around to sort of make the fuselage a little more square around the cockpit area. And I'm just mostly using nudging. I'm just use around like so, like so a bit. And now I have to make sure that whenever I mirror this, I'm going to get a smooth surface. I'm going to get a smooth surface because rebuilding the surface doesn't care about the tangency of the surfaces. It doesn't care about, you know, keeping this edge tangent to whatever might be adjacent to it. So to sort of quickly square it back up again, I'm going to use the command called symmetry, and I'll have to use it twice. So it asks me to select a surface edge. I'll select this edge here and ask you to pick a symmetry plane. So to define the plane, you want to mirror it about, and what it's done is sort of mirrored the surface, and as you can see here, lined up the control points so that it is symmetric and smooth. And then we'll do the same. I have to do the same to get the bottom edge too. And I'll just delete the surface I have left over here because I don't need it at this point. I'm just modeling half of this. And do a little more. Alright, so now I'm going to try to, first thing I need to do is clean up this, clean up the nose here a bit. You'll notice if we mirror this, if we do mirror this, and we look at this under rendered, it looks not bad, but if we look at it under EMAP or Zebra, see there's a bit of a point. Well, it's pretty tiny, but there is a bit of a discontinuity at the point there because I didn't draw this thing. Whenever I drew the original curves, I didn't the angle that I did the revolve at was a bit different, so we wound up with a bit of a little dip here at the very tip of the nose. So I'm going to use the set point command. That's under transform. Where is it here? Set XYZ coordinates, they call it. And I'm going to say set Y according to the world axis, and I'm going to pick 0 to line up the points so that we've got a smooth tip there. And then I'm going to do just a little bit more point editing here. So, and now I'm going to work on the cockpit and the nose here. So I'm going to try to do, I'm going to draw a polyline to define where the transition from the main fuselage to the nose starts. Now, of course, there are some planes that you could make by just sort of taking the shape that we've got and just sort of pushing points around, but that's not usually the way these things work. That's not usually the way these things are made. Usually, you've got a pretty crisp delineation here between the main fuselage and and sort of an area that's been sort of cut out of it for the cockpit windows to be fit in. Let's do something like that. I'm just going to take this. Let's change back to another view mode here and trim out. Trim these shapes out. Shape out. So now I have to make the windscreen and the front part of the nose. And what I'm going to do is, there's a few different ways I can do this, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work off of the edges that I have here to make the to make a surface to start making the cockpit windows. Gives me an extrusion. I'll explode that. And this is a surface that's just a starting point for further point editing. So I'm going to rebuild that. And what I'm going to do here is, now it has a lot of points to it because it was made from an existing edge that has got 18 points to it in the U direction. So I'm going to just change that to, let's say, 6. And in the V direction, we're actually going to keep the point count at 3. So we're going to change the degree to 2, just sort of as a starting point that I like to keep my surfaces as simple as possible while I'm working on them. And we're just going to gradually sort of work this out. Now, as you can see, the surface looks a little funny here in the shaded view. That has to do with the render mesh not getting updated as I'm doing some point editing. So there's a command if I right-click on a viewport title here called refresh shade. That will sort of fix it up there. Let's go in on the top, do a bit more gradual point editing here, and I'm not too worried about the fact this isn't lined up with the fuse. I'll be fixing that up. And go to the other view here. Now, you will note that I do usually work in a 4-view mode. I know that some people like working in a single 3D view most of the time. I'm kind of old school and work in the four views. So that's kind of a starting point for that. Now let's get the nose set up here, and I'm just going to start actually with a little plane. I'm going to take this plane and I'm going to start just sort of gradually work it into place. So I'm taking here and I've moved it some, and then I'm going to change its degree to add some control points to it. And I'm just going to raise it to 2 in both directions for the time being, which just gives me 3 points in both directions. A little bit of curvature. Curve, we're going to be bringing this down to match that. And I'll do some scaling. I'm going to use scale 1D to sort of scale some of these control points down. Like so. How are we doing on time? All right. Get this done. Have that. Now I can already see something I do want to change. Whenever I made my polyline to trim out this area here, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to, how I was exactly going to do it yet, but I can see I want to make a little change to that. So I'm actually just going to draw another line in here, and then I'm going to untrim the trimming that I did there. And I'm going to select the new line and hit trim like so, which has given me an extra edge on the nose here that I'm going to match this surface to. So, then we'll do some more. I'm going to change degree to 3 in both directions to smooth this out. to let me smooth this out a bit more, and then I'm gonna develop this a bit more with some point editing. Like so, and as you notice, I'm not using a lot of specialized commands for point editing. One that I do use a lot, it's not really point editing specific, but it is handy for whenever you're selecting points, is the fact that if I wanted to say select this control point here, if I go to click on it, half the time I'm going to wind up picking this surface. So a very handy little tool here is the Alt key that you can hold down, and it'll sort of force Rhino to not select whatever's right under the cursor. That it'll force a window selection so that I can go and grab those points and move them around without selecting the wrong thing. Of course, what I also do whenever I'm working on stuff like this is that I will also tend to take the objects that I'm not working on at the time, and I'll lock them, and I have my custom view mode set up so that they can so that locked objects are translucent, so that I can sort of work on what I'm focusing on without messing up what I've already done. Now let's do that. Now let's take a look at how this is doing, and then maybe we'll look at the wings. So I'm going to take this surface here, and I'm going to match surface it to the edge that I trimmed out. And I'm going to, just for now, I'm only going to specify tangency, because that's kind of all I need to do. And if I hit refine match, no, I'm not ready to kind of nail it down yet. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just trying to get it closer while I do the final bit of tweaking. Let's see. Let's set this isocurve direction adjustment to preserve isocurve direction. That sort of minimizes the way, that sort of minimizes how you how much the surface gets changed whenever you're matching it, like so. And then I'm going to do the same over here, this edge, like so. So, all right, so let's go a little bit more point editing, then we'll kind of call it a day on it. We'll kind of nail it down to this point. Now, it can get very tricky still. This little corner here can get very tricky, where these two surfaces intersect and come together. That can get kind of nasty. You have to be very, very sort of careful about what's going on there whenever you're finishing this off. But anyway, let's match up this here, curvature. Go. So we're sort of settled on that, so I'm going to match that up pretty tightly there. Let's see, let's do that again. Actually, let's sort of nail this down. Let's sort of start nailing surfaces down. So I have my tolerances here set really tight, 0.001 inches. Actually, 0.001 inches. So that's 1/10,000th of an inch, which is a bit, which is quite tight, but that's what I like to do, you know, just to make sure that stuff is of pretty high quality. Now, of course, the problem is now once I've done that, I'm pretty much locked out of point editing it. It's going to be pretty hard to point edit this without going and, you know, using rebuild or undo to get back to a more sort of sane number of control points. I'd like to do a little more here, and I'm going to change degree on this and change it to 5 in both directions, which gets me up to 6 points in both directions of the surface in kind of as simple and clean a way as possible. This is sort of idea of gradually raising the degree of your surface rather than sort of starting out with a degree 3 curve and maybe adding knots to it. We're sort of gradually adding detail to the surface overall. How's that looking? Well, too bad. That's about what we're looking for here. So I'd better get this nailed down and make the wing, and then check out Neon. Here. Now I need to sort of nail this down so that it will join up. And we've got that. And we'll do the same here. And of course, this can get a little tricky whenever you're trying to match up adjacent edges with a high level of precision. It can get kind of tricky that you wind up trying to match up one edge and then it winds up throwing off the other edge. It is handy in this case to use the preserve isocurve direction option, which sort of minimizes the changes. And then another thing is where it's handy to maybe not try to go for curvature continuity along the smaller edge, because you can usually if you've made these surfaces right up to now, it should be pretty good. That if you go and just match it up to tangency, the continuity of it should still be good. So I can go and join that up into a single surface. And let's look at this under zebra striping, and that looks pretty good. That looks not bad for a few minutes of work. On that. So that's good. I'm going to undo that join here. So now I need to clean up the intersection between the the front of the nose and the cockpit. And let's see. Well, first thing I'm going to do is look at this with an intersection. This is the kind of thing that can get a little tricky because of where these two surfaces are sort of coming together at this point. You can often wind up with small inaccuracies here, because the matching up of the surfaces is not 100% precise. So the intersection isn't going to be 100% precise either. And you can see here that if I zoom in really close on this, you can see that the intersection makes a funny little turn at the end, and there's another intersection that's just like a single point. So that's not bad though for this kind of thing, and I'm going to try to fix it up. We'll try to fix that up a little bit using a fillet, or at least kind of gloss it over surface. So I'm going to take this intersection curve here and see if I can trim off surfaces. Nope. Yeah, I could only trim off one of them because the intersection wasn't quite complete. You zoom in really close, be able to see that it doesn't quite fully intersect one of these surfaces here. Okay, so interesting. So let me just undo that, And let's see, I think what I'm going to do here is we're going to put a small fillet between these two surfaces. That would be kind of the frame of the window, and I'm going to do that using a blend surface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this intersection curve that we have, and I'm going to simplify it a bit in order to sort of clean up the intersection. And let's say I'm going to use rebuild to do that. So you see here that the intersection curve has 116 points to it. And I want to turn that down to, yeah, maybe 16 or so. It says here, you can see that it gives you information on the maximum deviation, which in this case is, let's see, 34 thou, which is not bad. I'm going to take that. And then I have to make sure that this is going to be symmetric whenever it's joined up. So I have to watch that too. So I'm going to take this curve and use the symmetry command on it. Select the end of it here. There to sort of fix the symmetry at the very end. Although something looks a little funny here about that. Yeah, the intersection's not. There's a little bit of a angle to it there. Come to think of it, I'm not sure I matched up. I didn't do the symmetry on this side of this surface either, so there might be a little crease there too. So let's run the symmetry command on this surface here and see if it changes it enough to be a problem. I don't think it does. So take that and we'll make a pipe with a radius of 1. Well, let's set the cap to none, and we'll set a radius of 1 along here, and split out. We're going to split both of these surfaces using that pipe, and if we're lucky, it should split them all out. And you can see here that we have a nice opening here, and then now I'm going to fill this in with a blend surface. Here, and let's move for here. Preview here, there's a lot of course, there are a lot of cool options in the blend surface command. The level 2 training talks about that quite a bit. And I'm going to go add some knots there. And then what I'm gonna do here is now we still have this strange little corner here, this funny little corner here. So what I'm gonna do to solve that is I'm gonna take the end point of my blend and move it so that we get a nice clean surface here. I have to reset the blend bulge values after you move that to stop the surface from folding over on itself. So, all right, I'm gonna hit enter. And I'm going to join up all of this. And I'm left with a small rectangular surface here, well, trapezoidal surface here, that I'm just going to, in this case, fill in with a surface network surface, which lets you select edges and gives you a preview here, and you can set the level of continuity you want on each edge and the level of tolerance that you want. And in theory, we want curvature continuity to each edge. And let's see what that looks like. All right, how does that look under zebra striping? And let's hide the curves. One of the handy new tools in version 5 is the view settings that let you go and sort of customize your view options without your display options, without having to go and change them in the tools panel. And we can take a look at that, and that looks, from a distance at least, it looks pretty smooth. I can crank up the mesh settings to make that a little more detailed. Of course, whenever you're dealing with analysis meshes, you know, you want to set them really high, like higher than you normally would. Things, and results there is not bad, not too bad. I'm going to mirror that, and you can see that's not bad except for except for a little seam, a little kink in the windscreen that I never matched it up. But anyway, I think we're going to just carry on this for the. We're just going to carry on that. So that's just a bit of a warning there that, you know, you really have to be careful about this stuff, that you don't wind up with stuff that's not quite tangent. Whoops. Okay, so there's that. So next I'm going to add a wing, and then we're going to move on to the visualization part of this. Now, if you are working on a plane, of course, there are various tools that you can find online, or sort of various resources that will get you airfoils, points that you can for that. Now, what I'm going to do here, let's see, let's make that yes, set sharp to yes. Oh, let me turn the curves back on in my view mode. That'd be good to know. Good to be able to see that. So that's our sort of what they call your root chord, the wing here. And I'm going to take it and extrude it out like so. And I'm going to take kind of a simple approach to closing off the capping off the end of it. If you're doing this for real, you will be aware that there is a that closing off the wing tips can be a very tricky process. But I'm going to do something just, you know, very simple here. So I'm going to use change degree to get some control points in the V direction. So leave the U degree at 5, change the V degree to 3. We'll leave it at 3, and then maybe I'm going to add another set of control points, maybe somewhere around here, like so. And I'm going to use the set point command to take this last row of points here and collapse it down to a singularity, about like so. And then I'm going to use set point again with the in the X direction to take the next set of points and line it up with it, so that we have a smoothly closed off wing. Now, of course, you'll notice that this wing is kind of funny looking. It has no taper to it or nothing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually use Rhino 5's universal deformation tech to give the wing some taper. So edit. So I'm going to use the cage edit command to let me control that a bit. Now, I guess the bounding box itself will work okay, but it might not be entirely perfect in this case because the wing is at a little bit. I did draw the wing at a little bit of an angle, so not going to be 100% perfect, but 2Z2. And that's given me a simple cage of points. that I can then move around to give the wing some taper here. I can just go and nudge those to give the wing, to taper the wing and give it some, and to thin it out here, and maybe angle it up, give it a bit more of a dihedral, I think that's what they call it. Not quite sure. I forget about that. So the final step I'm going to do on the modeling of this is, okay, I'm done with this cage, so I'm just going to delete it. And now what I'm going to do is make a fillet between the fuselage and the wing. And I'm going to use the Phillips Surface command for this. And we're going to do, well, let's just do this first, and then I'll show what I have to do to sort of fix it up. So let's set the radius to 3, trim to no, extend to yes. And I've selected. So there I've gone and put a small fillet on this. And, you know, this is fine, except for, of course, the problem of what do we do? What happens right at the back here? What happens at the back? This is kind of, we've got kind of a gap here. And this is another case where we have to look at the surfaces that we can't see, so to speak. So what I can do to get this to work better, now, let me think of what I'm going to have to actually do. I guess what I'll actually have to do, to be a little funny, is I'm going to have to take this surface here and I'm going to take the surface, I'm going to split it using the isocurve option. And, oh, that's not what I want to do. Maybe I'll add, yeah, I'm kind of looking at this and going, geez, do I really want to do it this way? Do I want to do that? I shouldn't have done that quite the way I did. Anyway, that's fine. Yeah, so as you can tell, guys, I haven't huge, you know, this is not a, you know, sales demo type presentation that has been, you know, rehearsed to the point where I can just blast through it at times. But anyway, the point is what I want to do, and maybe I'll just take the wing surface here and I'm going to split it here. Maybe I'll just split it here, and I'm going to work on this as kind of a dummy surface to get the fillet the way I want it, and then I can get the original wing back by just taking the original shape and this shape and untrimming it. So what I want to do is take the surface here, and yeah, a little tricky. I should have thought of this whenever I was drawing the curves initially. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to use split with the isocurve option, and I'm going to split this surface twice, just a little bit back from the from what they call the trailing edge. A little bit back from the trailing edge here. I'm going to take the little piece that was split out of it and remove that. And let's take that and shrink it. Use shrink trim surface so that it's not so that there's no sort of extra surface and we don't do anything crazy trying to go around that corner there. Now what I'm going to do is take the surface now. I'm going to use extend surf to extend the surface here, to extend each of these edges by how much it takes. Let's see how long it takes. Much it takes. 6. There we go. So now what I've got is a surface that is a wing surface that that folds over on itself here and extends past further than what I need in the final thing, but it's kind of a dummy surface that I need to get the fillets right. So let's see what we get here. Fillet surface, and lined up here. Of course, who knows? This could still not work because the shape isn't quite right, but now I've got, looks like it might have worked. But now I've got, let me take that, untrim that. So now I've got a fillet, wraps around there. Oh, it still needs, yes, I shouldn't have deleted that. Yeah. Well, that's pretty close to what I'm looking for, actually, as a matter of fact. That's what we're looking for. Excellent. So, just to get this to work, I'm going to have to split this again. I'm going to use it to split it by isocurve to get sort of the wing separated into top and bottom pieces, because what I would be trying to do next would be to make the wing intersect itself, and Rhino 5 doesn't know how to handle surfaces that intersect themselves. So I'm going to take these pieces, I'm going to shrink them down so that if I turn the points on them, they're kind of separate. And I'm going to use this, and oh, did it? Oh, it was like almost better. Actually, it looks like maybe that needs to be a little bigger. And so I'm going to do the Phillips Surface again. Now this is sort of an advanced application of fillet surface of filleting, and getting to know fillet surface is very handy, because there are lots of things that fillet edge can't handle by itself. And I'm just sort of cleaning up the fillets at this end here. That you can do pretty easy using fillet surface. But that would be kind of a topic for a whole other separate webinar. So I'm going to select these things, and this can get a little confusing figuring out which needs to be trimmed off with which. But I'm going to select this bottom wing surface and the bottom fillet and trim off the top wing surface. Is that working for me? Yes. And then I'm going to select the bottom, I'm going to select the other wing surface and this, and use it to trim off. Use it to trim these pieces off with each other. Let's see. So I'm going to take this wing and split it using the edge of that fillet, and take this part of the wing, and I guess coincidentally this is a technique we actually use in one of my advanced training CDs. This is actually an approach we use for cleaning up the wing on the Hercules. And trim these off. And I'm going to take this and split it using, whoops, I'm going to split it using that fillet. And does it work? There we go. So now what we've got, so that was a pretty complicated set of steps, a little more complicated than I really wanted to get into today. But that shows a pretty complex, but that is a pretty tricky kind of shape to do. That's a pretty tricky shape to do. And if I render this out, you can see there that that's about what we're looking for. Now, of course, I only used a fillet rather than a blend for this, but it's not a huge deal if you were working with a blend rather than a fillet. And I think on most real aircraft, it even is just a fillet rather than a blend. So now we've got this, and then I guess while we're at it, I'm going to join up the pieces of the wing, but I'm going to keep the fuselage separate for rendering purposes. And excuse me, I might want to save this out in case something conks out. So now I'm going to turn on the neon plugin here, and what neon is a ray traced viewport plugin, and this is an actual sort of working Rhino mode that I can actually I can actually go, and I have turn my curves on here, and I can go and select objects here and move them around. And it works just like a normal Rhino viewport, except it is ray traced. You do need a pretty hefty machine to make it work, or you need the caustic accelerator board. I do have one of those. I have kind of a pretty, this is a 4-year-old Core i7 rig, which is kind of the bare minimum specs for using neon, and using the caustic board, speeds it up between like 3 and 5 times, and it turns neon from being kind of a cool novelty to a real useful tool. Now I'm going to take this, and so I'm going to show a bit about rendering using the built-in Rhino renderer through Neon, since it gives us sort of a preview here, a few of the things we can do with that. And let's turn off the curves here. So I'm going to start with the basic body colors here. The basic body and the wing, we're going to give them kind of the same basic color. And I'm going to go to Material. There's the Properties tab and the Material tab. And I'm going to go, I have to set the material type to Object, and it gives us a default material type, and this is your sort of basic Rhino material. Let me go and turn on the ground plane. Let's turn on a couple other things. Let's turn on the ground plane so that we can see the shadows of what this is on, so we can show what you can do with this. We have our shadows here, and the paint on this is going to be of course pretty reflective, and so the most important thing about that is having something to reflect. So what I need to do is set up set my rendering environment with something to actually see in the environment. So I'm going to do that in all of the properties for your basic Rhino renderer are under your document properties. They're under Rhino render here, and you can set. So I'm going to go and set up my environment here. You can set what your background is, and well, first I'm going to look at an environment. So I'm going to create a new one, and they give you here. This is the stuff that sort of comes with basic Rhino itself. I'm going to go to this environments tab here, and I'm going to say this, and what this is an HDRI image, a high definition, a high dynamic range image that you can use to that you can use as a reflection map, and to provide lighting to your scene. And we'll look at that next. So we'll look at that, and for the time being, I'm just worried about about reflections, and you can see them in the background here. The environment has been set to the backdrop for the image. You can override that, so you aren't stuck with that. So let's take our material here and let's make it reflective. What reflective here? Okay, let's make it a little bit off-white. You make it just a little bit, nothing in the real world is kind of pure white, and nothing is also, not many things are also that reflective either. Let's tone down the reflectivity a bit on that. You want to make it pretty subtle. It's subtle. Yeah. And then I'm just going to, for good measure, take this and mirror it out. And as you can see here, just show that the neon view is a working mode there. And then I'm going to trim out the cockpit windows. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to just draw a curve in the side to use to trim them out. And I'm going to use the extract surface tool. That we're going to place the windows are going to be split out of these surfaces here. And I'm going to split them out using that curve. And I'll take these and join them back up. And we want to make these look like glass. Now, of course, if you have windows that you want to make, if you have like windows on, if you have something like this that's supposed to be glass, and you don't want to actually model the inside of your object, what you would generally do is make it look like, make it kind of a chrome material with a bit of a tint to it. Yeah. Let's give that a new basic material. We'll call that the windows. Oh, maybe if I should spell windows correctly. And I'm going to make it kind of a light blue. A light blue and very reflective. Now, if you want to make the glass more, realistic, then you need to make your glass an actual solid, so that it can actually, so that the refraction will work right. And so to do that, I'm going to use the offset surface command. I'm going to flip the direction here. I'm going to say a distance of, let's say, 0.15 inches. Where's my solid? Is that a solid? No. Oh, it didn't. So I went and did the offset, but I didn't have it set to being solid. No. Let's see if we can just select that, join. Make sure it's set to solid. Flip all. And make that a solid. And now we can go and make that transparent, make it translucent, or at least translucent. You would make it more or less translucent depending on how, depending on how finished the inside was. And then you can adjust the index of refraction to control how much the light gets bent. And to make glass, you use a value of about 1.56. That's the kind of thing you can look up on the net. For sort of various materials there. Now, let's see. What else do I want to show? I guess we want to show using the using your HDR for for lighting using the skylight option. And that's under the file properties here. And so I'm going to turn on the skylight, as we call it. And let's see, is it going to just switch to the environment? Going to work. There we go. So now you can see here that the light has suddenly changed. I hope you can see the difference here, that now it's actually using the information in the HDR, using the color in the HDR to provide sort of ambient lighting, sort of overall lighting. And you see here that it does look, really a lot more realistic. That it has a lot more of a more realistic feel to it. But anyway, I think there's more I'd like to show about this, but I don't know if we're running low on time. If we have if we have many questions to ask, if we might be thing. I guess I will show about how to sort of give this a different color. That if I wanted to give the cabin, the cockpit here, a different color, I have prepared a texture map for that, thankfully. And we will say, I'm going to duplicate this to make a new version of it. Actually, it'd be the fuselage. And what I'm going to do is into the color here. These are various slots where we can enter textures for color and transparency and bump mapping and etc. So I have one prepared. And what I have here is a set of stripes that I can apply to it. Sort of a striping pattern set up for it. Now, as you can see, it looks weird because it's applied using the default mapping, which just uses the U and V coordinates of the surfaces to apply to sort of map the textures to it. So that's not quite what we're looking for here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the fuse surfaces here and change the mapping on them. So I'm going to go over to the texture mapping widget here, and I'm going to go to apply planar mapping. So now that lets me set up a plane to define how my little pin striping setup gets applied. Now I have to edit it some because it's all red here, time being. So let's use the show mapping option to let me edit the mapping widget. I can actually take this now and move it, and like so. Oh, there we go. And then I'm gonna turn the control points on for it and scale it some. Edit those points. How's that looking? There we go. We're almost getting to what I did here. We have a red color on the bottom, and then I made a little stripe. I made a little sort of pin stripe above it. And that's about what I was looking for. That's kind of basics there. Now, as I said before, you can override the backdrop. You don't have to use your reflection map as your environment. So I can go to the properties here, and I can go and set my environment. Of course, I will have to go and set my sky environment to the skylight environment for it to change that. So I'm going to go to wallpaper. How do I set the wallpaper? No, I guess I need to do basic environment. There we go. Background image. Let's see if that does the trick. Yep, there we go. That's on the backdrop. And let me go turn off the ground plane. See in here, although I think the projection is wrong. And it's also using the thing. And so that's over. I have a bunch of tabs here for render related stuff. Now there was a hand raised. There was a question about why didn't I use the multiple match command. I just haven't had any well, there wasn't any opportunity in what I was doing to really use it, I don't believe. Let's see, we've turned that off, and we've set our environment, Rhino sky, and what I want. Okay, okay. Oh, well, this can be done just by using the view capture to file command. It can be done using view capture to clipboard, view capture to file. Some people also use the print command, believe it or not, to use it. Whenever you use view capture to file, you can set your file name. You can browse for a file name for this thing. Out, and you can set the resolution of it to to whatever you want, and then it'll go and sort of render it out. Do that there. Like that. So if you just hit the render command, what you will get is the Rhino renderer version of it. You won't get the neon result, which will look a little different and be kind of slow. Well, there you go. That wasn't too fast, too slow. I mean. I see that the projection in the neon viewport that this image shows a little more what I was looking for, although I'm not sure the reflection was right. But anyway.